I have missed discussing books, and I'd like to get caught back up to where my reading actually is. For quite some time I was really only finishing books in Spanish, and then I got kind of busy, so I was kind of considering whether it was even worth filming something like this. But then I got COVID, and so as I am now feeling better, this is kind of an easy video for me to film. So I believe that the last book that I had read in the last reading vlog that I made was Recitatif by Toni Morrison. So after that, we do have quite a few books in Spanish, so I am just going to run through those pretty quickly. I listened to 2 more Harry Potter books, so nothing to say there. I listened to The Sun and Her Flowers by Ruby Kaur, which is a collection of poetry. It is very much like breakup poetry. It's not something I would have sought out in English, so it was kind of cool to listen to it in Spanish, and I think if you like her style of poetry, go for it. I finished En Llamas, which is Catching Fire in Spanish, and again, I have talked about this series like way more on this channel than I even talk about it in real life or anything, but I really, really like the Hunger Games series. I think that it has a lot of good politics, a lot of good discussion, and yeah, enjoying reading it in Spanish. I listened to Los Hombres que no amaban a las mujeres, which is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It is very interesting to me reading more books in Spanish, seeing how titles are translated between languages. So the title of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in the original Swedish is Men Who Hate Women. And so as you can see, the Spanish edition kept that translation, and I have seen that to be the case many times, that translating between languages other than English, they tend to keep the title fairly close to the original, whereas in English, they're very, very likely to change the title significantly. So I think that that is very interesting, and I would love to know what kind of market research or whatever was done that taught them, because I'm sure they do it for a reason, that taught them that English readers have very particular title needs, it's something that I've noticed multiple times now, and I am fascinated by it, and if anybody is in publishing or translating and can tell me more details, I would love to know. So next up, El Alquimista by Paulo Coelho, obviously The Alchemist. I had never read this before in English, and mistakenly have said multiple times on my other channel and on Instagram that this was the first book that I read in Spanish that I hadn't read in English. That was actually not true. I don't know why I thought that at the time, but this is the first one that I had not read in English that I then went ahead and listened to in English. So as soon as I finished reading this in Spanish, I listened to it in English to see how much I had actually understood. And I know that this is a very polarizing book. I think it's quite funny, people's reactions to this book. This is a very big, if you're not into spirituality, I don't know, how much people know about this, but it's a very big, spirituality book. People talk about it as if it's, the most profound thing on the planet, and then a lot of people, as kind of a reaction to that, really, really hate this book because of how, fake deep it is. I can 100% see both sides of this argument. The story starts out in Spain about a young shepherd who ends up going on a quest that leads him to a lot of, exotic places. The little subtitle here is a fable about following your dreams or something like that. My problems with it, I don't think are necessarily the same problems with it that a lot of people have. So I do think that this is kind of fake deep. It very much oversimplifies social issues to the point where it's, completely disregarding any kind of institutional barriers, any kind of privileges or factors outside of your control or anything like that. And that is obviously problematic for sure. But I think that that's more the fault of the people who held this up as some kind of universal Bible for your actions. To me, it's a fable. It would be like holding up Aesop's fables and being like, you're telling me that a turtle is actually gonna beat a rabbit in a race. That's just not, like, obviously it's more serious than that, but it's just, again, to me, it's like, it is a fable. That is the point of fables, is that they pick out one little principle of life or something, and then they really overly simplify it so that you can understand it better or see it more clearly or whatever. I think it's more something that if you are someone who knows full well that you have everything at your disposal to follow your dreams and you are being held back by fear, then I think that this is a great thing to read. But my problems with it are that it is Orientalist AF, like so exoticizing of the Middle East, of Islam, of just, I could see it being problematic for sure. There's simultaneously this acting like people from the Middle East are more wise, while also sometimes calling them like savages and stuff. I don't know. That's my primary problem with that. This was great for learning Spanish because it is written so simply, so I do plan to use it in the future as a language learning tool. I just don't necessarily think that it's, the wisdom-filled thing that certain people have made it out to be. I then listened to Pride and Prejudice in Spanish. I had not reread this for a while, so it was really fun to reread it, although obviously I was not getting nearly as much out of it as I would have in English. But this has been a lifelong favorite of mine. I reread Pride and Prejudice so much when I was a teenager. I don't really even know why. I just loved it so much. Definitely my favorite Jane Austen and one of my favorite classics for sure. Next up, I read Silent Parade by Keigo Higashino. This is a mystery author that I have read quite a bit from. One of my monthly wrap-ups was almost entirely Keigo Higashino and Hwang Suk-young books, so I will link that. But this is the fourth book in the Detective Galileo series. So this is about a professor who is actually not a detective at all. He is a professor of like physics or something like that, who gets brought into a lot of police investigations as a consultant, and he is, a brilliant mind who can put together all the pieces. These are very much true mysteries. They are not thrillers at all. They are very quiet and kind of about, putting together all the little puzzle pieces of a mystery. The first one of these books is definitely the most well-known one, and that is The Devotion of Suspect X. This was an enjoyable read if you like the series, if you like his style of writing. It was extremely forgettable. I felt like it was a little bit overly long. If I hadn't read multiple of his books before, I might have DNF'd this just because I wouldn't have known where it was going, and it was very, very slow build. So not my favorite book by any means, but I will probably continue with his works if he comes out with more. I listened to the first Boxcar Children book in Spanish. I was wanting something really easy to listen to after I had listened to some adult books like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Pride and Prejudice and stuff. I wanted something really easy, and it was really easy, but at the same time it was actually kind of difficult to listen to because it was so boring, because it was a children's book. Sometimes it was hard to keep my focus. I had forgotten how young these were written for. I remember loving these books when I was a kid, and I'm sure that they are great, but not super enjoyable to reread as an adult, not gonna lie. Next up, I read The Guest Cat by Takashi Hireidi, and I bought this on a complete whim in New York. I have wanted to read it multiple times before, and I saw it and I was like, I want to sit in a park and read that book, and so I did. And it is very, very sweet. It's very short, translated from Japanese if you're not familiar. A couple who are writers, who I assume are loosely based on the author and his wife. They're living in kind of a picturesque little cottage, and one of their neighbors gets a cat, and the cat comes to visit them often, and then kind of their lives all get disrupted. It was beautiful. It was kind of sad. There's not a lot of point if you're looking for a plot-driven or even character-driven book. This is not it. Probably not going to read it again or ever really think about it too much again, but I don't regret reading it. It was fine. Next up, I listened to Esperanza Rising in Spanish. This is another one that I have not read in English and still have not. I did not listen to it in English afterwards because I kind of forgot about it. I know that this was a very, very popular childhood book for a lot of people, like middle grade reading, and I did not read it. I had no idea that this was going to be really sad. Very sad book, but I thought that it was very good. It's about a young girl who is growing up in Mexico. She's in quite a well-off family in Mexico. They own property, and then things happen. I won't spoil it, but things happen that upset their lives, and she potentially has to immigrate and is in a significantly less well-off life situation. And so, it's dealing with immigration, it's dealing with classism and racism. It's difficult to review books that I read only in Spanish because I am not fluent, but I think that potentially this could be a really good thing for kids to read. I'd have to read it again in English to solidify my opinion. Then I started with a few books that I am listening to for a future video that I would like to do. So I listened to 2 books from Riley Sager, who is a thriller author. And so I listened to Survive the Night, which I hated so much. So the premise of this book is that you're following this girl in the 90s. She has found herself kind of in the situation of riding with this guy across multiple states who she now, in the car, thinks may be a serial killer. Primarily, the book takes place in the car, but there are flashbacks and that sort of thing. I hated this book. I thought it was a very, very creative concept for maybe like a short story or something, but I thought that it was terribly done. The author had to do so many bizarre things in order to make this premise work, and they did all of them very badly, and all of the characters were very poorly done. Hated it. And then I read Final Girls, also by Riley Sager, and this one was better. I didn't love it, but it was interesting. So this, like several other books that have come out in the past 5 or so years, is about the final girls, the, last girl in a horror movie, the girl that survives. And so this one is specifically, there's a group of 3 girls in this story that all survived, and the media and stuff calls them the final girls, and now they are being potentially targeted. It was fine. The characters were significantly more interesting and significantly more believable in this one. The plot was better. It was still not great. I don't really recommend it, but it was better. Then I listened to Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty in Spanish. Love that book. Love Liane Moriarty. I have a whole video about all of her books. I read Clovis et Oops, which is my first ever book in French. I bought this in New York and I read it, and it's very cute. It's about a little boy who goes to stay with his grandparents on holidays, and they do fun things and stuff, and it was very cute. I believe it is brand new and was originally written in French, so probably doesn't exist in English. Then for this same video idea, I read my first Lisa Jewell book, Then She Was Gone. Again, this is a thriller. It was extremely mediocre. So you're following this woman whose daughter disappeared, I think 10 years ago, and the woman is getting into a new relationship, and it's kind of bringing up old things, and yeah, it was fine. It was nothing groundbreaking in my opinion. I don't recommend it unless you just need like maybe an easy listen. yeah, I wasn't into it. I did not like it. Yeah. I listened to The Prince of the Mist by Carlos Ruiz Zafón in Spanish. This is the first book that he ever wrote. If you are aware of his more famous book, The Name of the Wind, he's a Spanish author. This is the first of a series that he wrote that is for YA audiences. I think it absolutely reads like a first novel written for YA audiences. Again, I have not read this in English, so I could be judging unfairly based on my limited Spanish, but I just didn't like it. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. It started out really promising. It's basically a family during the war, I believe World War I, is moving out from a major city and into like a country area to be safer, and they kind of uncover this mystery in the small town that they are in, and it's like low fantasy, so like fantasy set in our world. It just kind of didn't work for me, the whole fantasy aspect of it. I think potentially if I'd read it as a kid, though, I probably would have really liked it, so I do plan to try out more of his work. And next and last, I read Either Or by Elif Batuman. So, my experience acquiring this book was actually quite funny. So, I love The Idiot by this author. So when I heard that she was coming out with another book, I was like, oh great, I'm so excited. And then when I read the description of it and discovered there was going to be a sequel, I was even more excited. And so I was like, well, do I want to go and buy it as like a new release? I never do that. I do not buy new releases almost ever. Like, it is a very rare occasion. I think in the time since I've gotten my BookTube channel, I have bought one, I think, The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I have a Barnes & Noble in walking distance of me, and so I was like, I'm gonna go to the store. If they have it, then I'll buy it. If they don't have it, then it is the universe telling me to just wait until it arrives at my library. So I go to Barnes & Noble, and I'm standing there in the new releases section. I find the place in the alphabet for this book, and there it is. There's one copy, and I was like, oh my god. So I'm standing there just, for like a split second, and I realized that behind me, an employee has walked up with a customer, and so I like jump, out of the way, like, oh no, like I didn't realize I was standing in your way, and she walks up to the shelf, grabs this book, and hands it to the guy that she walked up with, and I was like, oh. So, wandered around Barnes & Noble looking at stuff for like 10 minutes before mustering up the courage to go and ask if they had another copy. The lady looked it up and she was like, oh no, we only got one copy. It looks like everybody in the city only got one copy except one store that got 4 copies, so that's probably your best bet. So I, gave it a couple more days thinking about what message from the universe that very conflicting encounter was, and so finally I just went and got it from the other store, but it was very, very funny. But anyway, absolutely loved this. So The Idiot is the story of Selin, who is a Turkish American who is going to Harvard. The Idiot follows her first year at Harvard and kind of, I think, the summer after. It's set in the 90s. She is clever, absolutely hilarious, but she's also incredibly awkward. She has no idea what she's doing with her life, very caught up in other people's opinions of her and what she feels like she should be doing. So this is just an experience. Again, really not a lot happens in these books. So if you are a plot-driven person, I don't think that you will like either one of these books. But if you like characters, if you like commentary on the world and on society and relationships and humanity and academia and literature and languages and art, I think that you will love these. They are so clever, so thoughtful, they're kind of stream of consciousness, not fully, but there are definitely sections that kind of read that way. Can't recommend these enough. I would read The Idiot first if you haven't. This is definitely a direct sequel, and although it's not like a plot is going to be spoiled or anything, you just need to see Sellen's character, you know, develop the way that it was meant to develop. Definitely the most successful book in this video. So that is everything that I have finished since my last update. So we will be able to start afresh with August, and it's already like August 6th, but I haven't finished anything in August because I've been sleeping for like 14 hours a day. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.